they're graduating. For me and my colleagues, it's our favorite time of year because we get to attend graduations throughout the city. I had the great privilege of witnessing the joy of students, families, and school communities at the 4 graduations I attended this month. As board chair, I also had the honor of signing the graduation diplomas for all high school students and adults completing the high school requirements. The real credit goes to the students who are graduating and the teachers and families who've supported and helped them reach this important moment. It is so inspiring and joyful to see the smiles, tears, and hugs at each one of these events. The salutatorian and valedictorian speeches have helped me understand the perspective of graduates as they reflect on their journeys to date and look forward to their next steps. The pride of their school leaders taking that last opportunity to address their student bodies, now alumni. I've shed more than a few tears of joy and have listened carefully to all that I've heard through these events. I'm also reminded that despite these graduations, learning continues through the summer at many public charter schools. Schools are offering a wide variety of programs, including summer school enrichment, credit recovery, summer bridge, tutoring in literacy and math, and GED skill support. Also, many students are participating in the Marion Barry Summer Youth Employment Program. Moving on to tonight. Tonight, as we move through each agenda item, Briani, our moderator for the evening, will unmute DC PCSB staff or individuals speaking on behalf of a school. The hand-raising feature has been disabled. Individuals who have previously signed up to testify will be called upon. And as a reminder, all written public comment is available to the public on our website. If you didn't sign up by sending your name to the public comment mailbox before this meeting, please submit your written comment to public.comment@dcpcsb.org or call our public comment line to leave a voicemail testimony at 202-328-2660 and select option 2. Let's now hear from the witnesses who signed up to speak. I would like to invite Ann Herr to testify. And please keep your comments to 2 minutes. Welcome, Ann.
Well, thank you. Are you ready for me?
Sure, go ahead.
Good evening, Chairperson Crucy and members of the board. My name is Ann Herr, and I'm the Director of School Support at the DC Charter School Alliance. I'm speaking tonight in place of our Executive Director, Shannon Hodge, who could not be with us. Thank you for the opportunity to share our thoughts on the items currently open for public comment. First, I'd like to address the data collection summary for the revised accountability framework. The DC Alliance has appreciated the opportunity to participate in DCPCSB's advisory groups during the past school year and the thoughtful approach you took to these meetings. We realize that the data collection policy is intended to further inform the design of a new framework and that many decisions will be made next year. We encourage DCPCSB to continue to engage charter stakeholders as data becomes available and as more specific metrics and business rules are defined. We welcome DCPCSB's focus on equity and hope to see the accountability framework support this priority. To date, it is difficult to see how this will happen. We welcome additional emphasis on growth and view moving away from comparisons of all students as promising. There's been little discussion so far of how subgroup analysis will be incorporated into the calculation of metrics. We recognize that these discussions are meant to take place next year, and we look forward to robust engagement with LEA leaders on the impact of different methodologies. I'd also like to comment very briefly on other issues currently up for public comment, including virtual learning amendments and enrollment ceiling increases. The COVID-19 pandemic has posed innumerable challenges to educators, students, and families. As we start to return to normal, it's a time to encourage experimentation and innovation, which might look like opening up opportunities for virtual instruction in programs that are not virtual. While it isn't preferable for most students, virtual instruction worked well for some, and schools learned many important lessons about remote learning during the pandemic. We shouldn't miss an opportunity to engage more students in different ways in our efforts to return to normal. Finally, it is clear in the wake of several years of disrupted instruction and learning that students need increased opportunities. This includes making more seats available in high-quality schools. Absence of traditionally available data should not be a reason for preventing effective schools from serving more students. And we encourage DCPCSB to examine requests for enrollment ceiling increases flexibly and with the needs of DC students in mind. Thank you so much for your time and your thoughtful consideration.
Thank you very much. Okay, I will now welcome Hannah Cousineau.
Hello. I'm going to wait to begin my introduction for the folks at DC Wildflower to join. Brianni, I'm going to type some names in the chat box for you to make sure that we get everybody.
Welcome, Wildflower team.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone.
Rochelle, is this who's joining tonight? Or I see it. No, never mind. I spoke too soon.
Ebony, do you know if Zani is able to join?
I believe so. I'm on my phone, so I can't see who all is here.
Oh, she says she's here.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
we're also looking for Zani DeLilly.
Okay. Well, I think that's it. Hello, I'm Hannah Cousineau, a senior manager in the school performance department. Tonight, DC Wildflower Public Charter School will discuss its responses to the testimony provided by Advisory Neighborhood Commission, or ANC, Chairman of 7C, Antoine Holmes, at the April 18th, 2022 board meeting. During that meeting, the board asked school leaders to address each of Chairman Holmes's concerns and to return at the June board meeting to provide updates on their work and continued efforts to engage cooperatively with the ANC and Ward 7 as a whole. Per the school's written response, the representatives here tonight are prepared to speak to their efforts regarding community engagement, special education, facilities, and the school's administration. They are available to answer the board's questions. I'll turn it over to them to introduce themselves.
Good evening, Rochelle Kamboko, Executive Director. And I know that Neil is en route. He may not be able to talk to us, but Ebony, Zani, if you want to introduce.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Ebony Marshman. I am a teacher leader and co-founder of the Riverseed School, the first micro school opening under the umbrella of DC Wildflower. I am also an early childhood primary guide, what we call a Montessori or just teacher. So thank you so much for having us back.
And good evening, everyone. My name is Zani Dalili. I am the other co-founder of the Riverseed School. Just really excited to be here and to answer all of your questions about what we've been up to over the last few months.
Great. And I will just share. So I'm going to highlight some of the things that we described in our written testimony. First, community engagement. So we have indeed been continuing to participate in meetings of the ANCs, meetings of the Friends groups for Deanwood Library, Deanwood Rec. And we are most active, I would say, in the Deanwood Civic Association, where both business members and regularly attend, and the Ward 7 Ed Council as well. So While I am more ANC facing, Ebony and Zani have both been participating in those other organizations. In addition, Ebony and Zani have been out representing the Riverseed School at community events. So we tabled at Deanwood Day. They participated in a Father's Day workshop. We attended East End Market. One thing that we've learned, I think, in this spring is that even going to events and making sure that people, people have an opportunity to see us out in the community, as I'm not a resident, but Ebony and Zani both are Ward 7 residents, is really super important as well. So they have been out doing that pretty consistently. And then we've hosted some of our own events. So as we continue to recruit the last few students, we've learned that not surprisingly, that when Ebony and Zani are out and people get a chance to meet them, they are entranced and really super interested in knowing more about the school. So they've been trying to shift to make sure that that's what they're doing. In terms of construction and facilities, I know that one of the concerns of the ANC was that we hadn't really firmed up our relationships with our neighbors, and that we didn't have a real answer around parking. And in fact, we were able to negotiate a strong partnership with the Church of the Incarnation around parking. They are going to be our overflow parking for construction. And we expect them to be willing to do that for us if we have events, or if for some reason we have more than the handful of parking spaces that can fit in front of the building. We were really excited about being able to negotiate that. And then we have our neighbors to the left of us. If you're facing the building, we realized that in order to get our ADA compliant ramp built to the building, we needed to remove a tree, and we were able to, very smoothly negotiate that that removal. So that really felt good, knowing that we could go to them and say, we need this. Let us know what we can do to make that work for you. I feel like we've had good luck with that. In the document, I said we thought we would be started the week of the 20th. There's still one holdout on the permit, but it looks like we'll get started this week, which is really great news. And then in terms of security, the building is well secured in terms of fencing. In addition, the MCN build has put both lights and kind of cameras, and so we have really good monitoring of the area around, which I think will be reassuring to neighbors. So even if someone comes and tries to break in, or tries to break in even to a neighbor, we might catch them on camera, but the property itself is secured. And we definitely will make sure that once the construction team has started working, that they have several ways to reach us, either the construction on-site manager, our project manager, Tom Porter, or the contact information for the school will all be available to people once we're actually working there. And we're in the process of working with DDOT and with OSSI's school security folks to try to make sure that we have both the parking kind of maybe school parking zone or ordinance that we need, and good security on the property, so that neighbors can also not be concerned that we're a risk, or that we're putting them at risk because people are coming to get things from our property. And then I think around special education administration, I will just say altogether, really completing our hiring meant that we hired a special student support partner who comes with deep kind of knowledge around special education and English learning, or language learners, which is great. And then we've also started a partnership with Relay Graduate Schools, Partnership for Inclusive Schools. So we're part of their cohort. They're helping us to design our inclusive schools approach. And I would say our first meeting with them was really kind of confirmed that we are aligned with being an inclusive school. So that was exciting. And then we'll finalize our contracts with Onyx and Young and Well on the 1st, so that we'll be ready to start providing services in July. And really just in terms of administration, our response was to just say explicitly that we're a coaching school. We believe that everyone benefits from having a coach. And so Ebony and Zani as school leaders have both me and Dana Stiles, who is an experienced school leader, as coaches for their work. And then the charter supports team also has coaches that are supporting us. So our operations person has a relationship. Our Dana has the PFIS, and then I also have a coach. So each of us is also getting coaches so that administration is strong. And we'll be right in the building. So if in fact Ebony or Zani need anything, they have 3 experienced early childhood educators, as we mentioned before, in the building. So we really feel like we're in good shape around administration. And that is all I have to say. I'm happy to field questions or let Ebony and Zani respond if you have any questions for us.
Thank you, team, for this follow-up. And I think I had the opportunity to run into Zani and Ebony at one of their community events spontaneously, which was really nice to see. I want to open it up for board members, and I can throw in a question in too, but it looks like Jen may start.
I just had one question. Thank you for the excellent presentation. I had more questions, but you answered all of the others. Curious about what you're doing to support your teacher leaders to lead the administration of the school, to play that joint role.
So one of the Wildflower ways that I'm learning is a real emphasis on roles and responsibilities. So we have actually 2 days planned coming up where we're really going to dig into all the different responsibilities that are involved in school leadership. And while some of us on the charter support team, so the 3 of us that are not in the school, kind of operationally, will take what you might call policy level guidance on those things. Our job is also to engage those teacher leaders in making decisions about how the school will run, and kind of, I would say, walking side by side with them through the school year. So identifying where the big decisions are, and then, providing as needed, like our input to those decisions, but really just supporting them in walking through this year, making all the decisions that they need to make, so that they own that decision and the responsibility for the consequence or the accountability. Ebony, Zani, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
The only thing I would add to that is just that I feel very supported as we're learning some of those duties and what they'll look like, what they've looked like in the past year and a half, and then what they'll look like once we're actually in operation. And something that I feel very confident about and reassured about really is our slow pace of growth. So the fact that we'll have 1 classroom for 2 years really gives us room to create and implement systems and tweak them as we need to, and shift as we grow at the River Seat School, but also as other teacher leaders open their sites. So we'll be fully prepared when our director of operations, our executive director, and student support partner are working on site on other locations. I know that we'll have a strong systems in place to really manage it internally. And something else I would actually like to add, is that as teacher leaders and the co-founders of our school, the managers of the site, we are also empowered in the hiring decisions we make. So as we contemplate what the role of assistant teachers will look like at our school, what the aftercare workers will be doing, what those support staff on site will be doing, we have the autonomy to make the choices, to be very clear and intentional about expressing what those roles are. So if people are supporting with operational sides as well as instructional sides, we have the ability to really weigh in and create the positions that will be most supportive to the school and the children we're serving.
Thank you.
So it sounds like the groundbreaking is not the right word, but the movement to be able to do all of the construction over the next, I guess, 5 or 6 weeks is on a good path. How does remind us, how does enrollment look like for being able to open doors and have the facility meet everybody's needs in time?
Donnie or Ebony, do you want to jump in about?
Sure, I can share. And Ebony, correct me if I'm wrong, because I may say something wrong. So currently we have 15 students enrolled. We feel very strong about all of these families. We've been talking one-on-one. Several of them, actually, we had 5 families show up at our family picnic last Saturday, which was really beautiful. And we currently have 4 families that were just pulled off of the waiting list that we have active offers for. So 15 enrolled, 4 current offers out.
And then in terms of construction, the handover date is supposed to be August 1st. We are getting started about, a week or so late. So there is, Tom has already prepped us for possibly it'll be the 5th instead of the 1st, but we're still expecting to be in the building the first week of August, which gives us, a good solid 2 weeks to get set up and get moved in and then be able to open the door for some of our first family and student facing activities in the building.
Great. Does anybody else have any additional questions? Thank you very much for this thorough update. And we're excited to see what comes over the next several weeks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody. Okay. Now we move on to charter amendments. We have, I think Brianna has Netta and the Digital Pioneers team coming up first.
Hi, everyone. I'm Netta Musa, a specialist in the School Performance Department. Tonight, the board will hear from Digital Pioneers Academy Public Charter School regarding its request to relocate its middle school Digital Pioneers Johanning ahead of school year 2022-23. The school currently operates 2 facilities, one located at 4025 9th Street Southeast and one located at 709 12th Street Southeast. Digital Pioneers Public Charter School wishes to move its middle school from the 4025 9th Street Southeast site to a facility located at 908 Whaler Place Southeast, where it will share the proposed facility with Achievement Preparatory Academy Public Charter School. Starting in school year 2022-23, the school will serve students in 6th and 7th grades at the proposed sites. For school year 2023-24 and beyond, Digital Pioneers Public Charter School will serve students in 6th through 8th grade at 908 Wheeler Place Southeast site. Representatives from the school are available to answer the board's questions.
Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you for having me. Good to see you all. I'm happy to make more comments, but I didn't know if I should just answer any questions.
Well, if there's not anything you want to present on first, happy to jump in with an opening question, which is, can you kind of describe for us what the relationship with Achievement Prep is for this relationship?
Sure. I'd first say that, this opportunity allows us to be stable for facilities for the next 3 years. As the board may recall, we have moved and with expansion. And so we are really excited about this partnership with Achievement Prep. The partnership is just official us leasing their middle school building. The middle school building and their elementary building are completely separate. So there really is during the daytime no exact use for shared use of the building. However, there is a gym that we may from time to time share for evening events. So right now, it really is just a formal partnership in terms of serving the community. They currently serve students in K through 4. We serve students 6 through 10. And so really in our partnership with Achievement Prep, we've just talked about providing a seamless experience for families who have scholars in elementary and middle school ages.
Thank you for that. So does that mean that will Digital Pioneers and Achievement Prep continue to essentially co-locate once Achievement Prep reopens its middle school?
As we've touched base with Achievement Prep, they are reviewing over these next year whether or not to reopen their middle school. We hope to be a natural partner to be able to serve their middle school scholars. And that's why we actually only entered into a 3-year agreement. So if they do decide to reopen their middle school, they would take the appropriate planning time before they would decide to reopen, which would then give us enough time to then find an alternative solution. I do think ultimately we're trying to create as many options, either for us to stay there to be able to serve their students and families, or if they so decide to continue to come back and open their middle school campus, there's enough time for us to adjust if that's what they decide.
Leah, is it okay if I go? I'll go. So just curious, how have you engaged your key stakeholders in this process? Tell us a little bit about what did the families and staff and community think about this decision?
Yeah, it's a really great question. And as we outlined in our application, Achievement Prep has really built a world-class middle school. It's really designed with middle school students and families in mind from every aspect. And so when we initially partnered with them, we really were, our priority was to get all of our middle school scholars to the 908 Waller Place campus. However, that was really would really displace our current 7th grade families. They were used to coming up to our upper campus. And so we actually had a community meeting with our current 7th grade families. And they really raised kind of questions and concerns just about the switching from our upper campus to the Johanning campus. And that's actually made us really change to keep our current 7th graders at our upper campus. So next year, our 8th, 9th, and 10th grade scholars will stay in the same building, no displacement for families, no change in schedule for them. And it will allow us to have our 6th grade families, which they are used to going to our Johanning campus. It is less than, it's 0.2 miles away from the Waller Place campus. And so therefore, it really is what is most easy for our current families as well as our new and prospective families. We've continued to reach out to all of our community partners, especially since we have been at the Johanning campus. That has been a good experience for us. Families are satisfied, our neighbors are satisfied. And so we really just hope to continue the goodwill. It's obviously been hard doing a lot of things in person, but we have attempted to have a couple of in-person not back to school, gosh, not back to school yet, end of school year events, recruitment events, and those have been very well received. And we continue to do recruitment activities in the community as well. And I should say our partnership with Achievement Prep has also been very positive. We've met with them several times around how to share information, how to collaborate, and then just working through, while there are two separate buildings, they are one campus. And so thinking through how having middle school scholars there with their elementary scholars, and they are used to it historically, but as you know, their middle school has been closed for a couple of years. So reintroducing middle school families on campus, we really have met with them a number of times just to work through to make sure that there's clarity, there's consistency, and there's really good communication between both campuses to support families. Everything from how will we run fire drills to how will we do dismissal and carpool. That has been a key part of our partnership with Achievement Prep. Yep, so I'll stop there.
Great, thank you. And with all that said, how does the enrollment data look at this point?
Yeah, I knew you guys were going to ask that. Overall, our numbers are looking very strong. Our big goal next year is to have 600 across 2 campuses. We right now are at like 568 with, I would say, almost 500 of them fully enrolled, meaning we've captured all of their paperwork and all the documentation. We're still working on about 75 of them that are offers are out, and we're just trying to collect the final paperwork. But the big number is around 6th grade, which we have about 65 fully enrolled. And so that is pretty typical for where we have historically ended the year in terms of fully enrolled, fully matched. We have all of their paperwork. And now we really go into our final summer push to really get to what for us is our minimum of 100. We have a contingency up to 110, but I'm pretty confident that now that we have solidified the new building, we're doing outreach to our current families, and we now can do more in-person recruitment, that we will meet our target of maximum 120. But we're at 65 fully enrolled for right now. And I would say that while we ended the school year a lot later this year, I'm not sure why, that's typically where we usually end before the school year ends, is around half of our enrollment. And then we have spent the summer really reaching out to those final families.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for this presentation.
Thank you.
Summer's going to go quickly. It'll be back to school before we know it.
It's only 65 days, but I'm not counting until school opens, but I figured it out. But we're going to enjoy every 65 days all day for the next 65 days. But thank you for the consideration, and I look forward to answering any questions later. Thank you.
Thank you, Netta. Riani, now we can welcome up Melody Sampson and the Maya Angelou team.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Melody Sampson, and I am a senior manager in the school performance department. Tonight, the board will hear from Maya Angelou Public Charter School regarding its request to continue operating its Maya Angelou Public Charter School Academy at DC Jail during school year 22-23. The school is also seeking authorization to provide educational services at St. Elizabeth's Hospital, located at 1100 Alabama Avenue Southeast. This will allow students from the Academy at DC Jail who receive care at the hospital to continue to be served there by Maya Angelou Public Charter School staff. Lastly, the school requests to amend its charter goals, changing the high school campus's assessment from Scantron's Global Scholar Performance Series, which will be discontinued this fall, to NWEA MAP. Representatives from the school are available to answer the board's questions.
Great, Melody. Should I just go ahead and jump in? I can do that. Great, wonderful. Good evening, Chair Crucy and members of the Public Charter School Board. I know Dr. Walker-Davis isn't with us tonight, but to our staff and colleagues at PCSB, I'm Clarice Mendoza-Davis. I serve as the CEO of the See Forever Foundation and the Maya Angelou Public Charter Schools here in DC. And I'm joined by my colleague, Azalea Hunt-Spate, who is our Chief of Schools. So before we begin, everyone here with us this evening, we had an incredible celebration about a week and a half ago for our 13 graduates who walked across the stage and shared with us that mid-morning incredibly powerful reflections on how earning a high school diploma is definitely a part of their plan to make different choices going forward, and hopefully a pivot in terms of their life trajectory. We are here again before you this evening, the Maya team. We were here just about a year ago, asking members of the PCS board to support us in this endeavor. At that time, there were a lot of unknowns, and I can definitely say for sure, and also humbly, that we learned so many lessons serving the scholars who were eligible for educational services and specialized instruction in partnership with the DC Department of Corrections. And so I will give a little bit of an overview there, but I thought it was really important to share, I think, a piece of our school with you this evening, our new school. On the very first day of operations on October 1st, our founding principal and team and teachers literally circled up with the scholars on the school unit in the clinical treatment facility side of the DC Jail and Department of Corrections and said, we are here to get your input on how you want to form and build our school culture and climate. And what resulted from that initial meeting on day one is a credo of sorts that I'd like to share with you this evening. It's We Are Maya, and I'll go through what each of the letters stand for. We are motivated young men who are amazing human beings, with a Y, yearning for learning, and an appetite for life. And I think that's directly from the young men who we've been serving for since October 1st at the jail. And that's been codified and it's posted around our school. And I think it's something that sort of really is representative of just the pride that we saw all year long as scholars and teachers and staff figured out how to make great instruction happen, given a number of logistical challenges. So with that, I will say that our biggest success, of course, was being able to partner and accompany so many scholars on their journey to the completion of their diploma. We didn't even start at the beginning of the school year. And to be candid, it was quite an uphill battle those first few weeks, trying to figure out how to use a single school staff to provide instruction and related service and other support services to scholars who were in 3 different places in the jail. They were housed in the school unit, and then others were also housed in restrictive housing or in the general population housing on the other side of the facility. And I'm really proud of Principal Waller and Chief Spate and Dr. Felicia Hayward, our Deputy Chief of Secure Programs, who came together to figure out how to essentially split our staff into 3 and be able to do school 3 different ways in a single day, but every school day, every week. I think once we were able to better understand how to get past some of those logistical challenges, once we had access to students regularly, We also had to continue to build and foster relationships with the custodial staff who serve at DOC, and reorient everybody to the rights of our young people and our scholars, to their education, and to get people invested on board with what Maya was trying to do, and frankly, what these scholars signed up to do and opted in to do. I think last but not least, we were able to finally get technology up and running. So when there were things that happened that were outside of our locus of control, say there was a lockdown for security reasons, or there was a COVID outbreak, we were still able to partner with DOC using their devices to be able to provide both synchronous and asynchronous instruction, with a couple of bumps in the road, but mostly able to provide, and we saw that as a huge win. The bottom line is that we were faced with a number of obstacles, but our team really tried to make sure that we navigated those quickly, because we understood how critical it was for scholars to catch up and to re-engage. We find ourselves before you again this evening, as we've kept in touch with our partners in DC government, in the Deputy Mayor for Education's office, at OSSI, and also at the Department of Corrections. When we were before you last summer, we were under the impression that we would only be serving as the LEA on an emergency basis for an initial year of service. According to our partners in DC government, there's still some work to be done to determine which local entity is the appropriate LEA for education services and programming at DC jail. And so the ask to us from our DC government partners was, would Maya be willing to take this on for another year, serve as the LEA again, and sort of bear all that comes with that? And the answer was unequivocally yes, because serving these students are directly in line with our mission. And we started a school there, and we had a really amazing first year, and we want to keep that momentum going. And so we're here with that proposal before you this evening. I know that you also saw on our application are asked to begin officially serving the students at St. Elizabeth's Hospital who are in the process of transferring from the custody of the Department of Corrections to St. Elizabeth's to receive care there. It's a very small population of students, but there's a clear need, and we would really like to be able to reach and serve those students as well. And so that's before you this evening too. And then lastly, Melody did highlight how our assessment vendor let us know this spring that they would be discontinuing Scantron's performance series, which we have used for several years and which we love. So we were sort of surprised by the abrupt notice, but after extensive research on the part of our school team and our data team, we're proposing NWA MAP and look forward to, we didn't get a chance to pilot, but we're going to implement moving into the fall. We've already had discussions with school staff and have prepared students for the switch. But that's before you as well this evening. So Azalea and I are here to answer your questions about those 3 distinct items in our application. Thanks so much for listening.
Go for it, Jim.
Thank you for the wonderful presentation. I love your scholars credo. That's absolutely terrific. Thank you for sharing it. Are you getting all of the help and support and cooperation you need from the Department of Corrections and from other agencies of the DC government so that you can provide a smooth learning experience both for your scholars and for your teachers?
Mr. Sandman, we are, with a lot of persistence and follow-up and prodding and sort of bringing everybody from other entities together. And so to give you some insight to what I mean, we have a few different monthly check-ins. We have a monthly check-in with Maya, OSSI, and the Department of Corrections to make sure that the resources that we need on the ground, like access to tablets, getting websites whitelisted and cleared that for use for academic intervention, really trying to make sure that our teams, the Maya team and the DOC daily team serving daily is on the same page about who is where in the facility at any time, because that can change. And of course, that means we have to come up with a new plan every time that happens. So we have that monthly meeting, and that's actually facilitated by OSSI. We have another monthly meeting that is facilitated by Deputy Mayor Kine's office. Within his office, there's the Students in the Care of DC office, and they lead all of us. So it's us, DME, Maya, OSSI, and DOC in conversations that are oriented towards funding and procurement and the contractual agreements, memorandum of understanding that we have in place, tweaks and adjustments that need to be made there. That's the forum that we've used to really be able to advocate for what we need. You saw that we mentioned in our application this new task force that's been kicked off by Dr. Grant and Deputy Mayor Kine, the Task Force for Justice Involved Youth here in DC. We actually, Maya is a part of that task force. I do think that there are some decisions to be made amongst DC government entities. And so Maya may not necessarily be part of those conversations, but I think we've made crystal clear what we need to succeed from an access and logistical perspective, from a technology perspective, and then from a staffing and then relatedly cost perspective. If this is what you want, right, sort of the Maya quality of service, then this is what we're asking you to come back to the table with. So we are, for the most part, but it hasn't been for not tenacity on the part of Azalea and on our staff and our school staff advocating on a daily basis to get what we need.
I understand that this is still relatively new and your partners have some learning to do, but I have great admiration for what you're doing. You're providing a really important service, and you can't do it without the cooperation of others. It's the nature of the assignment that you have volunteered to take on. So I'm glad to hear that you're making progress. It shouldn't ever be difficult, though, to get the cooperation you need from others in the DC government. If you ever need any help, you have a standing invitation to let us know, and we'll do what we can to help you out. But having said that, I do appreciate that for your partners, this is something new, and they're probably kind of feeling their way. So I understand the need for some latitude as they adapt, but you need them. You have to have them alongside you in doing the important work you're doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Salmon. Glad to know that we have additional backup in addition to Dr. Walker Davis and our colleagues at PCSB. Greatly appreciated.
I just want to reiterate my gratitude to you and your team, Azalea. The presentation is thorough, and there's a lot of 3 distinct items. Starting with the credo, though, that sounds like it was a powerful and important, and is certainly consistent with the spirit and mission of what I know of Maya for starting the school in the right way. So I'm glad to know that all of the learning that has happened this year will grow into even more progress over this next year. And want to reiterate what Jim just offered of the importance of ensuring that all of the systems of support are working together. I have what is perhaps a more specific question around one of the distinct items, just to share with us on the NWEA map and the adjust, as I understand the rationale for switching assessments. Can you share with us some of the rationale around changing the progress targets when adopting NWEA map?
Sure, absolutely, Chair Crucy. I think the primary rationale there is that we didn't have an opportunity to pilot, and so we just want to make sure we have the space to start implementation with our students and learn more about the assessment and see our results and how much we can grow our students and how well NWA MAP will demonstrate each of our students' individual progress and growth towards their individual targets. I think, so yes, so I think that's what's primary to us. I think, you know, we endeavor to have as many students as possible meet their growth targets, but I think it was a way for us to just make sure that we had adequate time to learn more and understand the assessment. Azalea, is there anything that you want to add to that from your perspective?
I think you covered it. You covered it well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Great. I also just wanted to thank you for your caring and student-centered approach in this work that you're doing. And I'm curious, are there other schools or districts that you look to as leaders in this space that you were able to learn from? Or do you see yourself now as a leader in this space? Just wanted to hear a little bit about that.
Sure, absolutely. Ms. Ganjam, so I think so there's Maya, but then there's also the See Forever Foundation, our school management organization. See Forever is celebrating 15 years of service out at New Beginnings in Laurel, Maryland, operating the flagship Maya Angelou Academy now for 15 years. And so I think we took that model and we evolved and adapted it to suit the needs of the scholars first, and then also, like I'd mentioned, some of the logistical challenges and other security challenges that come with serving in an adult detention facility versus a youth detention facility. So I think that was sort of the primary anchor, and we went back to our playbook that we've had for quite some time, and we used that to shape our Maya Angelou Academy at DC Jail and at the Department of Corrections today. I think that we also, in this space too, we actually opened 2 new schools. So Maya opened the Maya Angelou Academy at DC Jail, and then See Forever opened the Maya Angelou Academy at Youth Services Center. And so the one principal at Maya Angelou Academy out at New Beginnings suddenly had 2 colleagues, and we created a community of practice led by Dr. Felicia Hayward, who served as principal at the Maya Angelou Academy out at New Beginnings for several years. And so that group has actually 2 months ago now, went down to visit the Travis Hill School in New Orleans and to meet with colleagues there to see their programming in both the youth and adult detention facilities. They were joined by other school leaders who lead schools in secure settings, I believe from Chicago and Milwaukee. And so we hope to keep that sort of more national community of practice going. And we were able to do that based on the experts and the leaders that serve on our board, who've been dedicated to this particular population of students in secure settings for over 2 decades now. So I think there's more learning and more community to be made, but we're happy with that start. And we're looking forward to learning from our colleagues outside of Maya, and also sharing our playbook with them to see if what we have learned and what we've codified to date in terms of our model and approach might make sense for their schools and their facilities as well.
Thank you for your leadership.
I had one final question with regard to the facility. I understand that the Maya has served students at St. Elizabeth's this year, and that reconciling the uniform per student funding formula dollars, at least at the time of preparing for this, may not have been reconciled, but has that come into place where it needs to be?
For St. Elizabeth's in particular, Chair Crucy, still in negotiation, with OSSI. I think OSSI has an inquiry to us to send them an invoice for the services that we did provide this year. So we're doing a little bit of research to figure out what's fair and what makes sense. But should we move forward in serving at St. Elizabeth's next year, we're hoping to be able to use the same approach to funding that we have used at the jail.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for your presentation tonight and for all that you do.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much for your support.
Thank you, Melody. Okay, Brianni, now we can welcome the Paul team and Andres from the School Performance Department.
Hi, everyone. I'm Andres Rojas Suarez, a specialist in the School Performance Department. Tonight, the board will hear from Paul Public Charter School regarding its request to offer a hybrid learning model in school year 2022-23. Under the hybrid learning model, all students and teachers will participate in in-person instruction Monday through Thursday and virtual instruction on Fridays. Fridays will also be a half day for students, followed by staff professional development. Paul PCS believes this shift to a hybrid model will allow for greater individualized learning experiences for students and maximize time for staff professional development. Representatives from the school board are available to answer the board's questions.
All right.
Welcome, Dr. Wright.
Hi, good evening, Chair Crucy. Good evening, members of the Public Charter School Board. Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to come before you all this evening to bring our request for an amendment to our charter so that we can offer a partial day optionally for our students each week. Do you want me to dig a little bit into the proposal? So I have to say that the genesis of this proposal, of course, came from what we've all been living through for the last couple of years, which is, of course, the pandemic. And one of the things that we pledged to do at Paul Public Charter Schools, and I think schools across the country pledged to do this, was make sure that when we came back into a full-time learning space, that we were not doing the same thing that we had done before, which was serving some students and was not serving other students, and also making sure that we were being creative and innovative because we understood that the pandemic brought with it not just all of the anguish of what living through a pandemic brings, but it also brought new challenges in the world of education as it relates to closing both the achievement gap and now closing this gap that was created in many ways because our students had not been in our presence for 18 months. And so in response to this, we commissioned a study to be done by EdOps this year. And what we asked them to do was actually put some teeth in this concept that the world was talking about relative to learning loss. Everyone was using the terminology, but no one had actually quantified or qualified what are we actually talking about when we're talking about learning loss as a result of the pandemic, and how does that look different from the achievement gap that existed for many students before the pandemic. And we learned a lot. And actually what we learned was incredibly useful information to kind of help us come before you with this proposal. We learned the number of weeks actually that most of our students would require who experienced some sort of learning loss during the pandemic period. We learned the number of weeks of additional instruction that they would need in both ELA and math. And EdOps has also worked with us to pinpoint the different skill areas that needed to be focused on so that we could provide that support. And so armed with that information, we've done a ton of research and studies on what the best practices are when you're trying to address the magnitude of gaps that's so different across such a huge group of students. And what we have found is that there were successes that we experienced in the virtual setting, especially as it related to things like differentiation, small grouping, being flexible, that we want to employ next year so that we can more rapidly address the learning loss and continue to close the achievement gap. And you'll hear me separate those two things, right? Because learning loss and the gap that existed pre-pandemic, they're not the same things. And so what we have to do to address both looks different. So with that, we are proposing that our half day, and we have submitted our request for a waiver to OSSI so that we would be allowed to continue to have our half day, that our half day be allowed to be in the virtual setting for those students and families that it works best for. This allows for a greater amount of differentiation. It allows for the use of varied platforms. It also allows us to meet some other new needs that have come about for our scholars this year. We're going to have over 80 of our students who are dually enrolled. That's the largest number of students that Paul has ever had in 1 year. And we are a small high school, usually around 400 to 415 students. So 80 students being dually enrolled, taking college courses necessitates a different level of support for those students. And so we believe that having the opportunity to use the flexibility that comes with a virtual setting will make sure that we can meet all of the needs of our students. And I'll pause there.
Can I ask a preliminary question? I just want to be sure I understand what the proposal is. You described it as an option, but my understanding reading the materials was that the option, it's going to be the half day on Friday is going to be virtual for everyone. The option is where you do the virtual. Do you do it at home or do you come to school for it? Is that right?
That's correct. That is correct. Yep. And that was really important for us because we do have a small handful of students, and we shared some of the survey data that we've collected from parents. And the challenges or the concerns that parents have raised is not about instruction being delivered virtually. It's more about my student needs to be in a different space other than home to engage in that virtual instruction. And so we wanted to make sure that we were able to honor those requests. And so we do have a plan that ensures that students whose families opt for them to be on site and engage in virtual learning, that they're able to engage that way.
For those who do the virtual learning at home, what will your expectations of the people, of the parents, of the guardians in the home be? What guidance will you provide them? What support will you provide them?
Yeah, so to give a little context for that, I want to give a little context. When it was time for us to transition into virtual learning, that fateful week back in March, Paul Public Charter Schools made a decision that was a bit different. We all got that call late Thursday evening that we needed to go into a virtual space. We understood that we could not release our students into a virtual space if we didn't do a couple of things. The first was make sure that they were ready to be able to learn virtually. So we had to do some very quick training on Google Classrooms, making sure that our students and staff and their parents. So we did several virtual trainings with families so that they would know how to support the students. We also made sure that all of our students had computers, and then we did a tremendous amount of work to make sure that the Wi-Fi was in place. So we have been operating in this space of equipping our families to be able to properly support our students from the very first day that we moved into the virtual space. And so one, it's making sure that our families are super clear on the different platforms that we're using. Our virtual expectations for learning are part of our parent and family handbook. They have been for the last 2 years. We do orientation for our parents on what those expectations are. And so they're very clear on those things. And then we really try to make sure that we stay well connected to families so that if there are students who don't meet those expectations, and during the 18 months, the expectations included that our children had to be in uniform, at least the part that we could see. Their cameras had to be on. They had to log in a certain number of minutes before the class started. And if those expectations weren't met, similar to what we would do if our students were with us in person, we would connect with parents and make sure that we were able to action plan to remedy those things. And so we intend to use the same course of action because we found success with that with our families.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Ricardo.
Yeah, great. Thank you for the information. Listening, I know you mentioned that your approach is grounded in addressing learning loss. And I'm interested to know a little bit more about what is the learning loss that you've seen among your scholars? And what data do you have that shows that these virtual Fridays is going to result in positive student outcomes?
Yeah. So the learning loss amongst our scholars is incredibly varied. And that's the thing that's really important to note. And so when you talk about differentiation in small groups, it really works better when you have groups that are more similar, but it looks very different. And again, when I talk about learning loss, I'm talking about what the expected rate of learning was for those students prior to the pandemic. And we've looked at map data, and EdOps has done really great analysis to show this was the expected rate of learning and then what the actual rate of learning was as a result of the pandemic. And so that's what we've learned. And what we've learned is that, again, it's varied. There's some children who experience no learning loss at all. There are a good number of students, and this is part of what has fed our understanding and desire to be able to offer this varied instruction. A good number of our students, particularly some of those who were struggling the most in school, did very well during the pandemic. The removal of distractions, the ability to focus, the fact that the virtual and technology-based platform was a match for the way that students kind of live and breathe. It helped them to grow. And so it looks like, some students having no learning loss, some students needing a month of additional instruction in either ELA and math, to some more severe cases where there are some students who may need an additional 22 weeks of instruction in either ELA or math to address some of the learning loss. And the reason why we know that it'll work is that we use some of the same strategies, sometimes both virtually and in place, around remediation and intervention over summer months as we're going to use on our Fridays. And what happens during summer months, and also we do this program called Smart Saturdays, is that we have smaller groups of children, much smaller groups of students. And so the ratio of staff to students is lower. And then we are able to use platforms that are far more customized to the needs of students. And so we're Read 180, Math 180 schools, just in general. We have courses that address that. But then folding in some of the ISXL platforms, iReady platforms, also using like our Khan Academy platforms, but it goes beyond that. It's also giving teachers the opportunity to work with smaller and more specific targeted groups to address any of the content and or skills that were not mastered during that week, which can be hard to do when you're place-based. We move and are very nimble in the virtual space, whether it's a breakout room or a different Zoom address. And we also, because we'll meet the mandated 1080 hours in the first 4 days of the week, have the opportunity to utilize more of our staff members to facilitate these small groups, which is really important, is that we're going to increase the amount of staff available to help address the loss that we're seeing with our students. And that's why we believe that it'll work. The last thing that I'll say is that when you look at our our fall to fall map data, which is typically how we cut our map data, we always see better gains with our students when we look at fall to fall data as opposed to fall to spring. And part of that is because when we look at fall to fall map data, that includes the period of the summer where we're actually implementing some of these strategies with our students. And it has ultimately resulted in higher levels of our students meeting their growth goals once we've come back after implementing those interventions.
Thank you for that. So just in terms of the facilitation of how these sessions might work, are the students actually going to be with their same core teachers, or will they be, you mentioned additional staff, so are there reinforcements? How will that relationship work? And how will information be shared between the staff and whoever's and the teachers?
And so by and large, our students will be with their same teachers, even though some teachers may be addressing different content, right? So for, let's say for some of our students who are dually enrolled, where we're going to be doing some enrichment work with our dually enrolled students, we're going to be making sure that we're swaddling them and keeping them on track with their college courses. Those teachers may not be their specific teachers because their specific core content teachers may be involved in intervention or remediation, but they will be teachers who are on our team who at some point in time have had interactions and exchanges with them. We are a data-rich organization. And so just as a function of grade level team meetings and content team meetings, we're constantly looking at students' performance. And so we have also embedded in our partial day data analysis time where we'll look specifically at whether or not what we're trying to address relative to either enrichment or remediation is actually yielding the results that we intend.
So in terms of those Fridays, will they meet with the same instructors every Friday, or will it vary Friday to Friday? How are you seeing that play out?
So every Friday, it will be consistent, but we will make shifts every single quarter, right? Because every quarter, usually, typically when you talk about intervention cycles, you're talking about a 6 to 8 week cycle. And that's typically the length of a quarter. And so we do midpoint data checks, and then we'll do an end of quarter data check, and then we'll shift and adjust. Because if we're doing this right, we're going to need to shift and adjust. Children's needs are going to change, and it may necessitate them moving to a different grouping structure, or it may mean that they have to shift focus on different content. So there will be consistency there, but there also will be some shifts given what it is that we're trying to address.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for all of this. We've answered a couple of my questions already. So I'm mindful of how intentional this approach is, and how intentional the school's approach has been in the past. And so I'm curious to hear a couple things. One, why Fridays? And then of all the days of the week. Two, in the past, we've talked about one aspect that sets Paul apart from several other LEAs is that it backfills. So while it's familiar and intentional that families may be familiar with remote learning and delivery of instruction accessing the tablets, how does that work for new families? And then third, consistent with the theme of intentionality, what about this design reflects lessons learned, perhaps operationally, or delivery of instruction from what had happened during the pandemic?
Yep. I'm going to ask you to repeat a portion of that second question. But the first one is the reason for the Friday is because it's not just the need to address the learning loss. And we speak about that in the application. It also addresses the need we have got to do better with the stopping in the moment and looking at data at the end of a week and doing corrective teaching immediately, right? And so it's not enough for us to get to the Thursday or the Friday and then you give the quiz and then we address it next week. So the reason why we're actually moving our half day from Thursday to Friday is so that we have 4 uninterrupted days of instruction. We assess on Thursday, and then we can do corrective instruction on Friday for those students who need it, with the goal of the skills being secure by the time they come back. Because the thing about intervention and remediation and learning loss is that you cannot be creating new gaps while you're trying to close old ones. And so moving from having that interruption 3 days in to having it at the end of the week, it just fits better with what we're trying to accomplish. I'm going to jump to the lessons learned, and then I'll ask you to repeat question 2. The lessons learned, there are a couple of things. We spent this year because we had students who were in a hybrid space all year because they had COVID waivers, right? And so even though it was just a handful of students, there were students in and out of hybrid and virtual learning all year long. It is really important for me to say that at no point in time does Paul, as its main source of providing hybrid learning experiences for our students, rely on asynchronous anything. And so what was important for us was really doing as much work as we could to perfect the synchronous virtual instruction experience for our students and also instructional delivery for our staff, because we still believe that, our students learn best when they are engaged with a real life human being. And so all year long, we have been working on refining our model for instructional delivery and also equipping our students with the skills that they need so that they can engage virtually in a meaningful way, recognizing that that is a different set of skills. And so the year and the allowances that were still in place because of COVID gave us the opportunity to do that. So we go into next year, if given the opportunity to have our partial day being in a virtual space, being far more knowledgeable and I would say expert in terms of delivery. And then the second thing, if you can repeat the second question.
Sure. You had mentioned early on that when the pandemic started a couple years ago, the Paul staff had come together to quickly pivot and create a remote learning plan and be able to train families to understand how this would work. With new families, do you have an idea of what kind of buy-in or support there is and a plan for how to get those families and students up to speed if they may be new to the Paul approach?
Yeah, so these are families new to us for this year. Absolutely. It does involve a more detailed orientation for those families because the rest of our families, especially those who were with us when the pandemic actually happened, they're kind of old hat to this. And there's a lot of excitement with our families, with the thought that this possibility exists for them for the upcoming year. So for our new families, again, that is definitely going to be part of orientation. We've also, as families are enrolling, let them know that we are exploring this option and opportunity for the upcoming year because we don't want to catch anyone off guard or catch anyone by surprise. And again, letting them know that if indeed, they want their students to be on site, that they can indeed be on site. And then I will say that we have, just a phenomenal staff who goes over and beyond when it comes to, really servicing our students and providing the support that's necessary, if families are struggling either to support their students in that space or there is a need that we need to address to make sure that students can productively connect.
Thank you for all of this. This was helpful. I don't have more questions, and I'm excited to see what comes of this.
Okay. Thank you all. I appreciate the time. Have a good one.
Thank you, Andrews. And Andrews, actually, you're not going anywhere. I think we're bringing up the Richard Wright team next.
Melody is doing that one.
Oh, okay. Thank you, and welcome back, Melody.
Hi again. Tonight, the board will hear from Richard Wright Public Charter School regarding its request to offer a distance learning program for up to 30 students on a routine basis beginning in school year 22-23. Participating students will complete 5 to 7 learning modules each day, and each module will be 70 minutes. Remote instruction will be synchronous 4 days a week and asynchronous 1 day a week. The virtual program will use the same curricula as the in-person program. Representatives from the school are available to answer the board's questions.
Welcome, Dr. Clark and team.
Thank you for having us. It's good to see you.
See you too. Would you like to begin with some remarks?
Well, first of all, I just like to greet everyone this evening. Thank you guys for having us. We're excited to present tonight just to enlighten about our program and how well this virtual platform, what we've learned since 2020. We've been able to learn a lot of different things that have helped supported our students academically, as well as our student body community, from parents who have requested the opportunity to have virtual as a safety net and support for them. As you know, we provided these processes from 2020 on that we saw success from, and things that we were able to help intensify our learning and to make some academic gains and supports. And so tonight we kind of welcome some questions. As you know, we serve a high-risk population that has various needs, from mobility to adjudication and other avenues that require support. And this extra support is going to continue to allow us to support them academically, as well, to ensure that their learning takes place appropriately and that we are able to move them along. During the time that we started with this virtual format, we've been able to keep our programs going, from even extracurricular activities down to the regular instruction. We've been able to advance our advanced placement courses, ensure that those assessments were taken, and that those courses would grow. We even were able to work and build a gifted and talented program, of which we implemented this year, that started with an early program as well as a late program. We were able to continue to push on and add another foreign language to our academic program, which we think has worked significantly. And all of this started with the ability to have that expansion, of using the virtual format. And so we've also utilized the virtual format in many ways by working synchronous, that we are recording those lessons, that some of those students have the ability. We found that if we could send those lessons out to students, that they can rewatch classes and actually work, and it helped all the students because they all had the same access to that. And working as a synchronous class, those students who may have had COVID issues or issues around mobility, homelessness, or requests from parents with a doctor's letter of permission to be on the virtual format, we found that they actually loved the ability. They were able to participate in class. We have the technology to support young people being able to have an interactive academic program and to work from home if necessary, and still have the actions of the classroom and participate with their peers. And so we are hopeful that, given the circumstances that we of the population that we serve, that we will still have the ability to have the flexibility as needed. I would like this board to know that we are a champion for ensuring that young people are in the building. In August of 2020, we were the only school that opened in August and championed those students in until the numbers started to rise again in that November. So it is our druthers to have students in, but we are hopeful that we can continue to have this as a safety net of interaction. Now, with using the actual virtual format, we have required several things from our young people. One, they must be cameras on and in uniform from what we can see. We have required them to participate academically. We also, even down to the seniors, they've had to defend their thesis virtually, and we did that all during the, they wrote their thesis and defended their thesis virtually during the year that we were all virtual. We have not let up academically, and we've been able to assess young people based on that need. So we're hopeful that this can continue to be a safety net, not as the mainframe, but as a popular safety net that we will utilize to support our young people, given the high-risk students that we serve.
Thank you, Dr.
I'm sorry if we
Clark
appear
and
a little
team.
tired tonight. You know, we've been real busy. Yeah.
Of course. And I've enjoyed seeing your students around in the community. I want to open it up to members of the board with any questions to start.
Can you tell us more about your basis for concluding that your students have done well in a virtual environment? Do you have specific? Can you just be more specific and
Absolutely
your view on that?
So I have two ways of doing that. One, I'll mention some of the ELA data from Let's Go Learn that we actually utilize as a base for ELA and growth and reading and writing. And then I was able to grab my math department head while he's on vacation and get him to jump in for a few moments to discuss the mathematics portion. But what we've seen is that the sample of students who utilized and requested to be on virtual, we watched their gains grow academically, and we also had some interviews with them. One of the things that they said is that so a sample group, we saw students, it varied, but we saw students all typically make gains, and those individuals grew from 1 to 2 grade levels in that particular year, based on the Let's Go Learn data. And then we also were able, and part of after having this snapshot interview with them, is that they were able to, what they said, look at the recordings, and that helped them a whole lot. They even grew by their interaction because they could see their interaction and what took place inside of the classroom. So on the sample data of Let's Go Learn, I'll give you an example of some of the data that jumped into mind, is that we had a young person who, and this Let's Go Learn data was grades, really focused on grades 8 through 10. We have a young person that is part of the sample, came in the fall, and this was a student that was a ninth grade at a ninth grade level, came to us with reading at a 7.5 grade level. That student was able to jump to a 10.17 on the data, a 10th grade level within that calendar year. That's the example of, and that student was a part of the virtual platform. And the support that went in, and part of the interview was that as I look at it, the interview, the student stated that they had the ability to review the information and to have substantive questions after the lesson was taught.
I have a related question about how you'll select the students to participate in the virtual program. Will it be student by student? You look at each student and make an individual determination about whether that student qualifies, or do you intend to have broad criteria and anybody who meets those criteria is eligible, and then do a lottery or something like that to select the 30?
Well, I think that what we're looking for is the ability to use as a necessity. And that would have to be a formal request with documentation from a medical or other challenging situations that would allow us to approve. This is not something that we're going to do a lottery. It's not a choice. Our goal is to have every student in the building. We still believe that learning is necessary. This is a safety net to support the high-risk population that we have. And we stand that we believe that is a good way of continuously moving them forward.
So it will be an individualized assessment with a
Be
showing.
an individualized assessment, correct, based on the need. And they have to demonstrate that the need is of substantive nature. And so this involves conversation with parents. It involves, some really in-depth conversations with them. As we work with them, there are a lot of scenarios that we serve with this high-risk population of homelessness, mobility, adjudication, and things of that nature that require some support that we want to be able to support them through.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for the information. I wanted to check, can you tell us a little bit more about the staffing plan that's required to support this model?
So the staffing plan is as such that the actual general educator and the special educator that is aligned with every class will also be aligned with the students who are on virtual. It would not be a different group of individuals. We like to keep our work consistent, and those individuals who are working, we think that's important for if a student is learning algebra, for example, that student needs to have the same algebra teacher, whether they are there or not. That consistency creates a building block that's important for us to be able to move them to the next level. So the consistency of staffing will remain the same.
So would you need to hire any additional staff to support the model? Are there other financial implications to this model?
No, there are no other financial implications with that. I think the implications that we already have is that we are fortunate to have the technology that was necessary to make that happen. And the design of our program we built out to make that work. And so there's no other financial implications involved with it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for this presentation. And it's been helpful and clarified a couple of the questions that I had had. The understanding that the priority is to have as much in-person time as possible, and this is meant to provide some flexibility to meet students' needs, particularly those that are most high risk, I see reference somewhere, a reference to routine basis. So is there going to be, is this a permanent program so that when a student has met the eligibility criteria to access this remote learning option, are they in it through the rest of the year, or will they cycle out of it regularly or at some point?
So we want to have a solid commitment, not an in and out thing. So for example, if a student needs that access, say first semester in the fall, then we would like for them to remain on it until at least the next semester, just so we can keep consistency in the work that we do. Because we believe in an orientation in order to have a solid routine. As you know, and when you're serving a high-risk population, in a lot of instances, culture and routine is vital to sustaining a very positive academic environment. And so if you're on for various circumstances, if there's some reason that a student needs, say a student is homeless for a week, and we can make that temporary assignment. But if it would go on, beyond something like a week, then we would need to ingrain them into something that has a little more sustainability, like a semester that will support, so we can have consistency.
Got it. Okay. Is the asynchronous day going to be consistent each week, or will that be flexible week after week?
No, so we're going to provide a solid schedule that will be repetitive every week, every day, and it will be in sequence, so everyone will know. So nothing is going to change up and down. We will have a solid schedule that would work for every day of the week, and it will provide those things that are aligned with the reference point from OSSE.
But just to make sure I'm clear, so there's 4 days of synchronous learning, 1 day of asynchronous. Is the asynchronous always going to be on a Friday or always on a Monday?
Always on a Friday, but we're going to have it across the board. There's one for each day. on it. And I'm sorry that I got my team on, so you correct me if make sure I'm saying this correct. I've looked at a lot of plans over the last couple of weeks. So I want to make sure that I am saying this correctly. Ms. Santos, could you pop in on that?
Yes, sir. Yeah, so it would be synchronous. It would be synchronous Monday through Thursday for 5 to 7 70-minute sessions. And then there would be a synchronous session on Friday for one module. And then the rest of the sessions would be asynchronous on that Friday. And that would be the schedule every week consistently.
Okay, thank you. And then my last question is, the application references the use of a virtual reality online immersive space that had been used in the Algebra 1 class before, Frame VRIO. Can you tell us more about that?
Well, I'll let the math department person tell you about that one.
Yes, good. So the Frame VR we worked with and was actually very successful with this year allows students to have the virtual access, but it allows them to have access to the information 24 hours a day, a week. So where normally you would have a Zoom class that allows students to come in when the Zoom link has been open, when they've been allowed in, using Frame VR actually gives them a virtual reality class that they have access to at any point in time during their day. So what that allows them to do is then enter this space and move about in this room as if it was an actual room to look at and have notes and access to the content and everything else in the room. Where your Zoom links, because I was finding that students were they were logging into Zoom at 9 o'clock at night. And I would tell them the next day, hey, I'm not on Zoom at 9 o'clock at night. But in working with Verizon this year and the professional development that I was able to take, we input this and found that those same students were now logging in after hours to get access to their information. And realizing that this was very, very useful to those students who were virtual learners, because that gave them even more engagement with the content.
Thank you for sharing that. That's helpful. Thank you so much. It's really interesting. We will be voting on this in the July meeting. Did board members, any additional questions? Okay.
Well, we are hopeful that the vote will be yes, because it is all about service and all about serving our young people in the best manner that we know. And so we thank you guys for the service that you provide for the District of Columbia students.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Melody.
Thank you.
Okay. I believe it's time for our public meeting. Board members, does anyone have a motion to begin our public, to approve our agenda?
I move to approve the June 27th, 2022 board meeting agenda.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call vote. Jim Sandman,
Aye.
Ricardo Ganjam.
Aye.
I have a proxy vote approval from Rick Cruz and aye for me. The motion passes, and we will move to our consent calendar. Would any board member like to remove an item from the consent calendar for future discussion or state a recusal for the record? If not, I will take a motion.
I move to approve all items on the consent calendar.
Second.
I'll take a roll call vote. Ricardo Ganjam,
Aye.
Jim Sandman,
Aye.
Oh, excuse me. I think I missed an item here. I may have to pause this. I have a public hearing item that I missed on the agenda here for the data collection summary, of course. I was looking forward to that. We'll have to hold that motion and go back and invite back up here Brianni, Kirsten, and team. Kirsten, welcome. Please do not take this as any indication of not valuing and not very much looking forward to this update.
It's okay. Thank you so much.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Kirsten James. I am a director in the School Performance Department. This is a public hearing for the data collection summary for the revised accountability framework. Public comment was opened May 16th and will close this evening with a vote scheduled for the July board meeting. One public comment has been received to date. DC PCSB staff also facilitated, advisory group meetings with school leaders throughout school year 21-22 to discuss the measures included in this data collection summary. Public comments and themes from the advisory group sessions will be considered prior to the vote. One of the priorities included in DCPCSB's strategic roadmap for excellent schools is to pilot and implement a new accountability framework to replace the performance management framework. This data collection summary is an inventory of the data that will be collected to model potential approaches to the revised framework. One of the most notable changes is in the revised framework is a focus on comparing outcomes of different student groups, enabling DCPCSB to assess how schools are serving students by race, ethnicity, disability status, English learner status, and socioeconomic status. We are also planning to expand how we measure growth, high school and adult education certifications, and attendance, among other measures. Next school year, data modeling will inform discussions with stakeholders about floors, targets, weights, and grade level groupings for the revised accountability framework. The complete technical guide will be released in spring 2023. I am happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very, very much for this. And I've had a chance to read through some of the recaps of the advisory meetings that have happened, but wondered if you would be able to share, at least at a high level, some of the feedback that we've gotten from school leaders. There's in the PK-12 and in the adult space across all aspects of feedback that we've gotten. And I know that there's quite a bit in there to distill. So what you feel would be most helpful to make sure we put on the record.
Okay. So there were two advisory groups that were held, the pre-K to 12 and the adult education. And so, and in the attachment, there are the topics that were covered in each session. So there were six sessions for each group. So what I'll say is for the pre-K to 12, a couple of the themes that came up were around expanding how we measure student growth, partially because in this time since we've been in the pandemic, because we relied primarily or solely on PARCC measures, and PARCC was not available, we haven't had any data to use to show student performance, right? Additionally, MGP, the PARCC measure, median growth percentile, can be very limiting. And for schools, there's been a lot of emphasis on not just using proficiency as a measure for school performance or school quality. knowing that many students are growing a lot when they're enrolled in schools, but may not reach proficiency. So that's one major thing that schools weighed in on. Additionally, one thing that is being considered or explored, I would say, is a consideration of how we expand college and career acceptance. Right now, or currently, we accept college acceptance as a measure. And so that looks like schools submitting college acceptance letters for students. Some of the feedback that we got from schools, specifically traditional high schools, is how they receive credit or acknowledgement for when a student goes to something like the military or the fire academy or police academy. Other career opportunities that they might have or certifications that they might receive that speak to students who choose not to go to college after high school. For adult schools, one major thing that comes up often is how attendance measured by in-seat attendance does not always apply to those students. And for a lot of the programs, et cetera, that they offer, in-seat attendance is not an accurate representation of students' engagement. And so we have been exploring what that looks like. We previously had student perseverance, but exploring what it looks like to measure student engagement and like it's called student perseverance. That is not in-seat attendance, because often adult schools are, for lack of a better word, dinged because in-seat attendance may not accurately represent their commitment or engagement with the programs that they're enrolled in. We're also exploring additional certifications that schools are offering or students are enrolling in for adult schools. Lastly, I will say, which is a big effort on our part, is the measurement of all of our measures by student group, or as many as possible. And for schools, I know that this is something that's come up with OSSE quite a bit with the STAR framework, but using that in order to measure how schools are serving different groups of students and the outcomes that they have from those different student groups.
Thank you very, very much for the recap. And I'm somewhat repeating, just want to make sure we repeat it for those who are listening here, that what comes next is we'll be piloting, and there will be additional active working groups throughout this upcoming year by smaller groups. So it's been PK-12 and alternative, but now it's going to be smaller groups that are more specific to grade spans. Is that right?
Absolutely. So what we've found, even just in this past school year, is that the grade bands that we offered for the advisor group pre-K to 12 and adult ed, there were still more specific conversations that needed to be had. And so what we will do is we will be modeling different approaches to the frameworks, and we will be talking to groups more specifically, maybe pre-K to 8 or early childhood even, because that's a very specific population, and we do have schools that only serve early childhood grades. And so early childhood, grade school, high school, traditional high school, adult ed, alternative. Actually, the alternative framework won't be changing, but for adult education, we will have a specific group for them as well.
Did other board members have questions? Okay. Kirsten, thank you and your team so much for the recap. We know this is a short recap of what is a lot of work, both to come and what has been done. We've been working at this for a while now. This is really important. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Chair Bruzy.
I am told that we can resume the roll call vote on the consent calendar. Please excuse the confusion there. So we had a motion to approve the items on the consent calendar. Now we're doing roll call vote. Ricarda Ganjam. I saw an aye. Now, Jim Sandman.
Aye.
I have ayes on each of the items in the consent calendar from Rick Cruz, and I am also an aye, so that motion passes. On to new business. Is there any new business? Hearing none, I will take a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn the June 27, 2022 board meeting.
Second.
Roll call vote. Ricarda Ganjam.
Aye.
Jim Sandman.
Aye.
I am also an aye. I do not need an aye from Rick. Thank you, everybody. And